This is the World Organic News for the week ending 6th of August 2018. John Moore reporting. Decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. We begin this week with a post from Quartz entitled, Humans have depleted the world's natural resources with 5 months still to go in 2018. The title probably tells us all we need to know, but for those new to this space, we'll dig a little deeper. Quote, The Earth is finite. Civilization's appetite, it seems, is infinite. The Global Footprints Network, GFN, has been assessing just how much of the Earth's resources we use, from water to clean air, and the day each year when our species overshoots the planet's ability to annually regenerate itself. Humans have overshot nature's annual budget starting in the early 1970s, and every year the overshoot date keeps creeping up. In 2018, it's the 1st of August. End quote. So from the 1st of August, we're chewing into principle, not living off interest. To put it another way, we get X amount of sunlight each year. This is converted into food through plants and into weather through complex heating and cooling as the Earth rotates. In the past, let's say pre-1950, more sunlight came into the system than we took out. This went on for some 4-odd billion years. We do have a reserve of sunlight in the system. We are chewing through that, and have been since the Global Footprint Network began their work. We can probably question their methodology, but the consistency of the results and their one direction of travel gives us reason to pause and, at least, think. And now from Archie's Worldies blog, CDC, backyard chickens responsible for salmonella outbreak. Quote, Tulsa, Oklahoma, KTUL. Her name is Rinda Myers, but she is known in the Tulsa area as the local chicken expert. I'm something of the chicken doctor for Tulsa, Myers says. She had bred chickens in her house in Kowota for the past 5 years. When she heard of a report about a salmonella outbreak, she was curious. When she heard that the Centers for Disease Control are making this outbreak on backyard chickens, she was a little annoyed. The risks are actually quite minimal, Myers said. She says salmonella is always a problem with backyard hens, but there is a greater risk at factory farms where chickens are often crammed together. Lack of sunlight, lack of ventilation, lack of cleanliness. These are huge risks for salmonella, and you have them in factory settings, Myers said, end quote. All that being said, as a stock keeper we have responsibilities to our stock, ourselves and the wider community. That salmonella is endemic in poultry is a question we probably need to address. I first came across this issue in Australia while attending a food safety supervisor course. The instructor was talking about the need to thoroughly cook chicken because of the endemic salmonella issues with the product. I asked why we weren't dealing with the problem at source, and she shrugged. I suspect the answer to my question comes down to a matter of cost shifting. If the responsibility for food safety is shifted to the final cooking process, the chicken producers don't need to deal with chronic salmonella infections, only with acute outbreaks. I'm not sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if automatic feeding of antibiotics to factory farm stock has led to a resistant strain, which can only be killed through heat. So back to the post. It is possible that a salmonella outbreak could have come from backyard chickens. So as stock keepers, we need to follow some basic rules. Things like washing our hands after handling stock, after feeding them and after collecting eggs. Probably beforehand as well. There is a need to think about this through the HACCP process. There's a link in the show notes. HACCP, or HACCP, is a food safety system developed by NASA to ensure no astronaut ever had food poisoning in space. After all, diarrhea and zero gravity are not a good mix. This HACCP process can be applied to any stock, not just poultry. I would also thoroughly cook any meat anyway. Salmonella, listeria, there are many nasties out there, so be safe, people. Our next post comes from Greg Hansgen's economics blog entitled How to Reduce Global Warming, like getting people to drop the QWERTY keyboard. This post argues that we need a new way of getting the message across. As I see it, the current messages of either we are all doomed or we need to live a 19th century arts and craft existence are not acceptable. Yes, this is an oversimplification, but I think it broadly holds. I've always felt uncomfortable with the idea that market solutions which got us to where we are should be the solution to the current problem. This blog is refreshing. Quote, a couple of decades ago, scientists began studying the dynamics of technological transitions, the jump from one technological system to another, while continuing to supply the same service to society, like mobility or communication. Their observations supported insights from fields ranging from evolutionary economics to cultural anthropology. Their policy advice completely contradicts that from neoclassical economics. Rather than needing a long-term global market price for carbon, we need a sequence of sector-specific policies that focus on specific milestones, end quote. I suspect an engineering solution rather than a market one is the answer. I will ruminate on this and come back to it in later episodes. Now to a dual-purpose post. Nothing focuses the mind like a drought. Increases in suicide attempts are well documented. Animals lovingly bred and cared for generations have to be either sold or worse, or far worse, destroyed. The fact it hasn't rained and continues to not rain can be soul-destroying, can also force a need for new ways of doing things. In this article from the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, How Planting Trees and Grasses Can Help Stabilise Farmland in a Changing Climate, we have a solution to both climate change and drought mitigation. In continental settings, droughts are part of the story of life. Ensuring the soils and vegetation are up to surviving those periods takes a different way of thinking from running a moldboard plough through any soil type to grow wheat. From the Post, quote, as parts of this country face the toughest drought in some people's lifetimes, tree species that can assist in water and soil management have a renewed purpose. Need to raise your water table, stabilise your soil, or grow an alternative fodder source in arid conditions? There is a tree, or even a grass, for that. Fran Bodkin, a Dharawal elder who has degrees in environmental science, geomorphology and climatology, wrote the Encyclopaedia Botanica by hand when pregnant and confined to bed rest. She said farmland could be stabilised naturally to help it cope with changing climate, and it's as simple as planting a few trees, end quote. This is part of a growing intersection of many disciplines. Permaculture, for instance, is based upon a perennial approach to agriculture for just that reason. In permaculture, no one tree is viewed in isolation. Guilds are created around each tree. These guilds are made up of other plant species that both support the tree and increase the productivity of the system as a whole. Fair enough, this is a very cursory explanation. If you're interested in permaculture and other deep ecology systems, I'll be co-hosting a new podcast with Rich Bowden called Permaculture Plus from mid-September. There's a link to the website in the show notes. Any topics you'd like to see covered would be greatly appreciated. Now back to the Post from the ABC, quoting Fran Bodkin herself. Trees are sophisticated pieces of engineering, purpose-built for their habitat, but they work best as a team and can be destructive if planted as a single species. One of the things that really bugs me is when we plant only one species of gum tree. It gives them no support because our ecosystems grew up with each other for millions and millions of years, and they have learnt to support each other. We separate them out and expect them to do the same thing that the former multi-species community did. They need each other, end quote. Not surprisingly, monoculture is a shocking idea irrespective of the species. I wonder from time to time what jamming one species into cities is doing to Homo sapiens, but that's a story for another episode. And on that happy note, I'll draw this one to a conclusion. Remember, decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. As a podcast listener, you may be thinking of producing your own podcast, but you're not sure where to begin. Drop over to mrjohnmoore.com and pick up the free checklists I've written to help get you started. I'm also doing live presentations twice a week and putting them up as podcasts under the show name Pod Thoughts to help you through the process. Link in the show notes and details at the website mrjohnmoore.com. A transcript of this episode is available at worldorganicnews.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week.